The fourth class of therapeutic drugs are antimicrobials. So anti means against, microbials means microorganisms. So what does antimicrobials do? They prevent the growth of microorganisms, right? So yeah, right. So they inhibit the pathogenic action of microbes such as bacteria, fungi, virus or other parasites selectively. Okay, they're selective in their nature. So an antimicrobial which works on fungi might not work on viruses. So the treatment has to be specific for the problem and the cause. So antibiotics, antiseptics and disinfectants are antimicrobial drugs. Yeah, so antiseptics are again used very, very often at home, right? So we'll study about antibiotics first. So a substance produced wholly or partially by chemical synthesis, which in low concentration inhibits the growth and destroys microorganisms by intervening in their metabolic processes. Very, very simple, as the name suggests. So the examples are arsphenamine, known as salvarsan. Then another example is Prontosil. So antibiotics destroy or prevent the growth of microorganisms, right? Now, how do they do that? There can be two ways for doing that. They can either have a killing effect or a inhibitory effect, right? So Cidal is Cidal means killing. So there are a class of antibiotics called bactericidal, and their action might be static or inhibitory also. So they are called bacteriostatic. So here we see the examples for these two classes well. So the three examples for bactericidal are penicillin, aminoglycosides and ofloxacin. And for bacteriostatic, the three examples are erythromycin, tetracycline and chloramphenicol. So these are the chemical names, okay? The medicines might not be known by these names as such, but yeah, these are the chemicals used. So yeah, there's another classification of antibiotics depending on the range of kind of bacteria on which they act. So for example, there is broad spectrum antibiotics. So when the antibiotics has a tendency to act on gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria as well, and a wide range of them, it's called a broad-spectrum antibiotics. Examples are ampicillin, amoxicillin, chloramphenicol, vancomycin, and ofloxacin. Then the second type is narrow-spectrum antibiotics, which work either on gram-positive or gram-negative bacteria. They are very specific in their action. The spectrum of microorganisms on which they can act is small, basically. So an example is penicillin G. The third type is limited spectrum antibiotics. They are effective against a single organism or a disease, or maybe one or two organisms or diseases. So below we see the figures, the chemical structures for penicillin and chloramphenicol, which again I would say need not be memorized. Then we come to second class of antimicrobials called antiseptics and disinfectants. So antiseptics are basically the ointments that we apply on wounds and cuts and ulcers for their cure, right? So the examples are furacin, soframycin. Soframycin is very, very commonly available in use. These are not ingested like antibiotics, they are just applied on the outside, right? Antibiotics are ingested, that is, they are eaten, taken inside the body, right? So Dettol is a mixture of chloroxylenol and terpeneol. Bithionol is added to soaps to impart antiseptic properties. Then iodine is a powerful antiseptic. Its 2-3% solution in alcohol water mixture is known as tincture of iodine, and it is used for curing wounds. Iodoform is also used as an antiseptic for wounds. Boric acid in dilute aqueous solution is weak antiseptic for eyes, right? So when we suffer from eye styes, then we use boric acid, right? So yeah. Then disinfectants are applied to inanimate objects. Okay, so on our body we use antiseptics, but on inanimate objects we use disinfectants. Inanimate objects such as floors, drainage systems, instruments, etc. Same substance can act as antiseptic as well as disinfectant by varying the concentration. So for example, 0.2% solution of phenol is an antiseptic while its 1% solution is a disinfectant. So chlorine in the concentration of 0.2 to 0.4 ppm in aqueous solution and sulfur dioxide in very low concentrations are disinfectants. Right, so again, they are applied to inanimate objects to prevent the growth of microorganisms or microbials. Now, there's another class of drugs called anti-fertility drugs. So, anti-fertility drugs prevent prevent childbirth, basically. So, birth control pills essentially contain a mixture of synthetic estrogen and progesterone derivatives. Both of these compounds are hormones. So, birth control pills essentially contain a mixture of synthetic estrogen and progesterone derivatives. Both of these compounds are hormones. Now, progesterone, it suppresses ovulation basically, and ovulation leads to pregnancy, right? So, norethindrone, is an example of synthetic progesterone derivative most widely used as an anti-fertility drug. The estrogen derivative which is used in combination with progesterone derivative is ethinylestradiol, or also called novestrol. Now we come to the second important use of chemistry in everyday life, that is chemicals in food. So there are various uses of chemicals in food and food industry, right? Numerous. But we're going to study just two of them in this chapter and very briefly. First application is they're used as artificial sweetening agents. So people nowadays are very worried about the amount of calories they're putting in, and they want to eat sweets, but they want to avoid taking calories. So artificial sweeteners are sweet, but they do not have as much calories as natural sweeteners. For example, orthosulfobenzimide or saccharin is 550 times as sweet as cane sugar, right? But the amount of calories that it has is much, much less than sugar. Other examples are aspartame, sucralose, and allicin. The second application of chemicals in food are they're used as preservatives. Food preservatives, we know, are very important. They prevent the food from getting spoiled due to microbial growth. The most commonly used preservatives include table salt, sugar, vegetable oils, and sodium benzoate. We all know that pickles are made at home, and salt and oils are added to them because they need to be preserved for a long period of time to be consumed, right? So yeah, they act as preservatives. Sodium benzoate is used in limited quantities and is metabolized in the body. Salts of sorbic acid and propanoic acid are also used as preservatives. The third important application of chemicals in everyday life is they're used for cleansing, as cleansing agents. So we all use soaps and detergents every day at our home, right? So soaps and synthetic detergents, they help in removal of fats which bind other materials to the fabric or skin. Okay. So in surface chemistry, we're going to study in detail about micelle formation and the action of soaps, but we're going to touch upon those topics in this chapter as well. So we start with soaps. Soaps are sodium or potassium salts of long chain fatty acids such as stearic, oleic, and palmitic acids. So yeah, this reaction given in the figure is called saponification, in which the ester of stearic acid or a fat is combining with sodium hydroxide to form a salt, sodium stearate, and another compound, glycerol or glycerine. So in this reaction, esters, as you saw, esters of fatty acids are hydrolyzed and soap obtained remains in colloidal form. It is precipitated from the solution by adding sodium chloride. Only sodium and potassium soaps are soluble in water and are used for cleaning purposes. Generally, potassium soaps are soft to the skin than sodium soaps. So potassium soaps are used for bathing soaps. Now, this is a very important concept, a very, very important question. Why do soaps not work in hard water? So when we wash clothes using hard water, the soaps do not work at all. The clothes become yellowish in color. Why does that happen? There's a scientific reason for that. The chemistry involved gives us the reason for that. So hard water contains calcium and magnesium ions. Now these ions, they form insoluble calcium and magnesium ions respectively when sodium or potassium soaps are dissolved in hard water. So the soap reacts with the calcium or magnesium ions present in hard water, and instead of the normal action of soap, what happens is insoluble calcium stearate or insoluble salts are formed. Now, since they cannot dissolve in water, no micelle formation can take place and the soap action is impeded, right? So these insoluble soaps separate as scum in water and are useless as cleansing agents. So the cleansing property of soap is completely destroyed. That is why soaps do not work in hard water. It is because hard water has calcium and magnesium ions which form insoluble soap. Now, this precipitate also adheres onto the fiber of the cloth as gummy mass. Right. Now we come to synthetic detergents. Now, synthetic detergents are cleansing agents. We all know that. They have all the properties of soaps, but the only difference being that they give foam even with hard water, which does not happen in the case of soaps. Right. So synthetic detergents are classified into three categories. One is anionic detergents. The examples are sodium salts of sulfonated long chain alcohols or hydrocarbons. Alkyl hydrogen sulfates formed by treating long chain alcohols with concentrated sulfuric acid are neutralized with alkali to form anionic detergents. Similarly, alkyl benzene sulfonates are obtained by neutralizing alkyl benzene sulfonic acids with alkali. So, in anionic detergents, the anionic part of the molecule is involved in the cleansing action, right? So, sodium salts of alkyl benzene sulfonates are an important class of anionic detergents. What happens in anionic detergents is that the anionic part of the molecule is used in the cleansing action. Now, they're used in household work. They are present in toothpastes, etc. Next, we come to cationic detergents. Now, cationic detergents are quaternary ammonium salts of amines with acetates, chlorides, or bromides as anions. Cationic part possesses a long hydrocarbon chain and a positive charge on the nitrogen atom. Hence, these are called cationic detergents. Cationic means positive charge, anionic means negative charge. To give an example of a cationic detergent, cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide is a popular cationic detergent and is used in hair conditioners. They have germicidal properties and are expensive. In cationic detergents, the positive charge is there and that helps in cleansing action, and in anionic detergents, the anionic part, the part containing the negative charge helps in cleansing action. So yeah, now we move on to the third category called non-ionic detergents. Non-ionic detergents do not contain any ion in their constitution, no charges at all. One such detergent is formed when stearic acid reacts with polyethylene glycol. The reaction is given, no need to memorize it. Now, the application of non-ionic detergents is they're used in liquid dishwashing detergents, and they remove grease and oil by micelle formation. Mechanism of cleansing action in this type of detergents is the same as that of soaps. Right. So, here we see an important point that non-ionic detergents and soaps function by micelle formation, but anionic and cationic detergents function in different ways, which we do not need to go into that much detail actually. This much amount of information is sufficient for board exams and JEE mains point of view. Now, the ecological problems caused by detergents. So, main problem is that if the hydrocarbon chain is highly branched, then the bacteria cannot degrade it easily. So what happens in soaps and detergents is that there is a long hydrocarbon chain present and there is a polar part present, which is hydrophilic, right? Now, if the hydrocarbon chain is highly branched, then it will be very difficult for the bacteria to degrade it easily. Now, obviously, we cannot we cannot afford for detergents to get accumulated, right? We want their degradation to occur. So what we do is that unbranched chains are preferred. So we try to use more salts which have unbranched hydrocarbon chain, so that they can be biodegraded easily. So yeah, in this chapter we read about the drug action, the action of different drugs on the different kinds of proteins and biomolecules, and how the drugs function and their classification. So basically we should remember the functions of different kinds of drugs and 2 or 3 major examples. We do not need to memorize the difficult, complicated structures. And apart from that, the cleansing action of soaps and detergents is important. The reaction saponification is important. And right, and there are some features of the cleansing action of soaps and detergents which are important, right? Like how soap action is affected in hard water and things like that. Now, if you go through the theory, this much theory properly, this given presentation will be good to go for solving all the questions that occur that come in JEE mains or board examinations. Thank you. That was the chapter Chemistry in Everyday Life.